Tom Pelissero on loan from NFL Network and co-hosting Good Morning Football, joining us here. A couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. I know it's kind of quiet in June for the NFL, but I was wondering, when Sean McDermott got his contract extension, the first thing I thought was, this is a guy who could get fired if they don't go to the AFC title game, it feels like, this year. Am I making more out of this with Sean McDermott than I should be?
I think that those extensions, which really were done, from my understanding, quite a while ago, it wasn't something that just happened after the Stephon Diggs thing. This were, a lot of times they want to get the GM and the head coach done at the same time. So if one contract's done early, they don't announce anything until you get later on to the offseason. With Sean McDermott and the Bills, I think that there's a lot of the national narrative seems to be missing the circumstances of last season. I mean, they've built a stable program in a place that did not have a winning culture for a long time previous to that. You go back to the end of October last season, the Bills are 6-1. They had beaten the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. From that point forward, the following week, first week of November, Josh Allen messes up his elbow, and he was not right for months. He was wearing a brace for a while. That altered his mechanics. He finally shed it toward the end of the year and was throwing the ball again, but he really had to work through it. It was a significant injury. Von Miller tears his ACL. You had the game that was moved at the last minute to Detroit. That was one of their home games. So they played 3 games away from home in a 12-day span. You had the DeMar Hamlin situation that right before the beginning of the playoffs, because that was, I believe, a week 17 game, and that upended everything and created all these different questions. And of course, also, I mean, the Bills are the first team in modern NFL history that had to watch one of their teammates literally die on the field and come back to life. And there were other circumstances throughout the course of the season. You go back to training camp, Dalton Knox's brother tragically passed away. Kim Pagula, the owner, had a heart condition. She has not returned to the team, and she was really omnipresent with that building. Listen, everybody's got adversity. Everybody's got injuries. But the number of things that happened to the Bills, particularly in the second half of this season, I don't think should be discounted because, mentally, physically, emotionally, it really did take a toll on that team. You're hoping now, if you're on Josh Allen's going to have a healthy elbow, and they're going to be not have any type of tragedies happen to them through the course of the season, maybe this team's going to be pretty good. I do not get the sense at all that Sean McDermott is on the hot seat in Buffalo. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that can happen, but I think that you have to take the context of last season with, when you're talking about evaluating the future in Buffalo.
Brandon Staley, Mike McCarthy, those seats warm?
Depends how they play. I mean, in Dallas, I think that there's always, listen, if the Cowboys lose in week 1, there's going to be people talking about should they blow it up and should they make major changes. That's the nature of being with the Cowboys. What I think is interesting with them is Jerry Jones is 80 years old. We know how desperately Jerry wants to win a Super Bowl. You look at the things that they've done since Mike McCarthy's gotten there. They haven't made desperate type of moves. They haven't gone all in on a single season. They're building through the draft, which McCarthy believes in, and then supplementing with low risk types of moves. The Brandon Cooks trade cost them virtually nothing. The Stephon Gilmore trade was for a 5th round conditional pick. You add some of those guys, but that program is built through, it's going to be Micah Parsons, and it's going to be Trayvon Diggs, it's going to be CeeDee Lamb, and obviously Dak Prescott. And they want to get a deal done with Tony Pollard. Those are who you're building through here. So I think that, externally, while I understand that there's always that heightened level of angst or speculation, or whatever you want to call it, in Dallas, for everything I've heard, Jerry is a believer in what Mike McCarthy is building there. Now, McCarthy obviously takes a lot on his shoulders here because he's now calling the plays. Kellen Moore's moved on to the Chargers. So that's one more way that things are going to be directed at Mike if this doesn't go right. But, Mike's had a lot of success as a play caller within the league. They're going to do some things differently schematically and philosophically, even though they're still working in the language that Dak is used to here. So obviously if things don't go well, I think the public look at the Cowboys is going to be different than what's happening internally. It just depends how this season goes. And then with regard to the Chargers, Brandon Staley's in the 3rd year of his contract. They have been, a productive football team, particularly on offense over his first couple of years. And he made the bold move of picking up Kellen Moore, who became available because it became apparent in Dallas that they were going to make some changes there. They really think that that's going to unlock some things with Justin Herbert. I think inevitably when you've got a really good young quarterback and you've got the amount of talent that the Chargers have on the team, results are going to are going to drive a lot of different things here. But the Chargers have also not made a habit of firing coaches with money left on their contracts. And there's a belief level in Brandon Staley. I mean, they remade some things in this offseason. They entrusted him to make the change with the offensive coordinator. They're believers in what they potentially can be from a personnel perspective as well. Because, and I hate to make it sound like we're making excuses for all these teams, because again, everybody's got injuries, but they won a bunch of games last year where Justin Herbert was doing it almost entirely on his own. He didn't have his left tackle, Rashawn Slater, for almost the entire season. It seemed like they never had all three of their wide receivers together at the same time. Defensively, Joey Bosa missed time. Derwin James missed some time. J.C. Jackson was their big scorer in free agency. He didn't really play the entire season. They're set up. I think that they're the team that nobody's really talking about here. And I got a chance to talk to Brandon Staley about a week ago here. You know, he's very confident in what they've built. They thought that they had a really good draft. They built a basketball team in that wide receiver room. I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch because Kellen Moore's had some really productive offenses. And I think that we all as football fans like to see Justin Herbert throwing it all over the place.
Boy, leave it to Tom Pelissero to let the air out of this segment where I thought we might have coaches on the hot seat. Is there any coach who's on the hot seat going into this season?
I mean, I think that, you know, inevitably the coaches, I always look at it this way. If a coach is going into year 3 and they've not won a playoff game, then you can fairly say that there's going to be speculation about their job, right? Because not many guys get an opportunity if they don't win a playoff game for 3 years to come back for year 4. So Brandon Staley would fall into that category. Okay. Mike McCarthy fell into that category the year before. I think Sean McDermott's in a different spot just because they have won as consistently as they have. Yeah, you want to get to the mountaintop here, but you know, there's always a degree of randomness and even luck that comes with winning the Super Bowl. You know, you have to get into the playoffs every year. You got to build the strongest roster possible, but sometimes, you know, your starting quarterback has an elbow injury. It impacts him down the stretch. Sometimes, you know, various circumstances can put you not at 100% going into the playoffs. The fact that Buffalo's been there over and over, I think puts them in a good spot, just like in Dallas. Again, I understand where people, you know, take aim at Mike McCarthy here, but you know, what have they done? The COVID year in 2020, it's really hard to really establish a culture there. That was a struggle. They didn't have the right defensive coordinator. They brought in Dan Quinn, and things turned around. 2021, they get in the playoffs. 2022, they win a playoff game. If they don't take that next step and get to the divisional playoffs or get to the conference championship game, then I think it's natural for anybody, including Jerry Jones, to say, okay, are we doing the right things here? But there's a belief level with Jerry and Mike that's at a higher level than I think a lot of people externally realize in Dallas.
I know that the NFL and HBO don't want to hold a team hostage, but it feels like they're pretty close to holding the Jets hostage for Hard Knocks here.
I mean, objectively, is there anyone who doesn't work for the Jets, who doesn't want to see the Jets on Hard Knocks? Like, in the end, if there's not a team just raising their hand and going, we absolutely want to do it, if you got to, you know, nudge somebody into doing it, the Jets are the natural team. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is obviously a fascinating story, but, you know, so is Robert Saleh. They got a lot of bright young players on that team. They got some big personalities in that building, guys like Nathaniel Hackett, who, you know, is certainly going to be motivated to show, you know, how smart of a coach he is, which is something that Aaron Rodgers has said repeatedly, even when Hackett was going through his struggles last year in Denver. You know, the Commanders, you can make a case for them too, because they're going to have, you know, you want to talk about coaches on the hot seat. I think Ron Rivera, naturally, with a new ownership group coming in, he's been there for 4 years.
Yeah.
He's going to be somebody who you look, if they don't make the playoffs here, yeah, his job is potentially going to be in doubt. But they got that. They've got a potential quarterback competition because Sam Howell still has to hold off Jacoby Brissett. You got the Chase Young situation that's playing out there as well. The team is being sold. All of those things, I think, make them a compelling case too. But it's hard to beat the Jets for drama. So unless there's a firm, if you want us to do this, you're going to catch a lot of hell because of it from us for however many years to come. I just think that the Jets are the logical fit, but we'll see how it all nets out.
But you know, it would be great if they did Hard Knocks on the Jets and the Jets openly didn't want to accommodate them. That's part of the HBO Hard Knocks is the Jets don't want to be on Hard Knocks, but they're still trying to film all of this stuff. So you almost get that, you know, tension, animosity towards the camera crews and every, you know, maybe make it interesting.
Right. The teams also get the final cut on these things. I mean, they get to see the show before it airs. They can say we need to take things out. If you get a team that's not volunteering for it, that doesn't necessarily want to be on the show, then maybe you're not getting as good a stuff as, for instance, we got last year with Detroit, which really did run at the ball because they wanted to show off that Dan Campbell is a lot. There's a lot more to that guy than one soundbite from a press conference 2.5 years ago, and I think that he showed that both on the show and based on what they did in the second half of last season on the field.
Is Trey Lance further away to being an NFL quarterback or closer to being an NFL quarterback?
It's always complicated with Trey Lance because even when he was coming out of college at North Dakota State, the people who had doubts about Trey Lance would just say he started, I want to say it was 15 games total in college, and he averaged like 22 passes or something like that over those games. He played one game during the COVID season. It was not a very good game, and all the issues about ball placement, accuracy, those kind of popped up a little bit in that game, and then we just haven't seen him. The biggest thing was he needed to play football. He needed to get reps because everybody loves Trey Lance as a guy. From everything that I've heard, he attacks it there. He studies. He's picked up the offense quickly. But the two knocks on him have been it's the injuries and it's accuracy. Well, he has been injured. And because of those injuries, he's not been able to get the reps to work on the accuracy. So I don't know what Trey Lance is. And I don't think the 49ers ultimately know what he can be either, and neither does anybody else within the league. That's where, there's certainly still a possibility that Trey Lance could be traded. They're going to want to get, down the line here and see what Brock Purdy has going on. They're going to want to see Sam Darnold. They're probably going to want to see, does anybody get hurt during training camp? Because if there's any team that should have a healthy level of paranoia about injuries at the quarterback position, it's San Francisco. But what are you getting for Trey Lance right now?
Yeah.
You traded multiple first-round picks to go up and get him a couple of years ago. There's no tape to show, hey, this is a guy who we think should be a starting quarterback someplace. So it's a difficult type of calculus there. I would anticipate that Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback for the 49ers. Everything that I have heard on Brock Purdy, his rehab since that internal brace surgery has been positive to this point. He went down to Jacksonville yesterday. He's working out with Will Hewlett and Tom Gormley on some mechanical things. You wouldn't be doing that for a couple of weeks in June and July if you were worried about, taxing your arm and things like that. There's still a process he's got to go through here, but every expectation right now for the 49ers and for Brock Purdy that he's out there ready to go for the season.
Finish this sentence. If the Arizona Cardinals end up with the worst record in football,
it's probably the best thing that can happen to them based on where they are at from a team building perspective. Listen, we all know what's going on in the draft next year. You got Caleb Williams, you got Drake May, you have other quarterbacks who potentially can play their way into that conversation as we get through the 2023 season here. And the Cardinals are at a point where you've got a new regime there. Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort, a quarterback they didn't draft in Kyler Murray, and a quarterback who's not going to be out there at the start of the season in all likelihood because he's coming off of the torn ACL. They will be in position to draft a quarterback. That would mean moving on, obviously, from Kyler Murray. His contract is very tradable. It would have been tradable even if they had wanted to trade him prior to this season. But with an injury, nobody's going to trade for a quarterback who's coming off of that level of an injury and is probably going to miss the majority of this season. Now, I'll also say the new regime has wrapped their arms around Kyler Murray. We saw the photos of them, took the plane and went to his statue unveiling at Oklahoma. Everything that I've heard is that he's been in the meetings and he's been active and the new coaching staff, likes him. But again, you're going to own potentially a really high pick in the 2024 draft, and you've got that once in a lifetime type of opportunity to go take the quarterback that you want. Also, don't forget, I thought it was really interesting how Monty Ossenfort proceeded through the 2023 draft, his first in charge. It was very much motivated by getting additional picks next year. So they got a 1 in 2024. I believe they have 2 extra 2s in 2024. So even if they win some games, which listen, Jonathan Gannon, his personality, the T word is not going to come out of his mouth. He's still going to go into this like we're going to try to make the best of this thing and go try and win some games. But even if you somehow win 5-6 games there and you drop and you don't have the number 1 pick, they've got as much ammunition as anybody to go up and get one of those quarterbacks if they want to. I think one of the really interesting storylines this season, Dan, will be when Kyler Murray is cleared, whether that's October, November, December, depending on the severity of his injury and when exactly he's ready. How soon do they put him out there? How much of Kyler Murray do they want to see on the field especially knowing that maybe that's the guy who wins you a game or two that maybe costs you in draft position
Yeah.
as well. And then you also run the risk of him getting hurt. It's a really interesting thing there. I know that staff is really focused on, establishing their culture and things like that. But you're right to bring that up. I mean, there's a decent chance that they're going to have a really high pick here, and they're going to have to make an evaluation at the quarterback position.
Thanks for taking time, Tom. We appreciate it.
You got it, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Tom Pelissero, NFL Network insider and co-hosting Good Morning Football this week.